the chair of Leave Means Leave, and before that was head of the British Chambers of Commerce. Welcome to you. What would Philip Hammond need to say for a Leave Means Leave budget?
Well, of course, it would have been much easier for the Chancellor had the government embraced the reality of where we're heading, which is to actually have a WTO exit in March next year, because that would have given the Chancellor a huge amount of money, 39 billion plus net contributions in future to play with, to actually create the Singapore on Thames that they seem to think is a bad idea, which would have mean, of course, cuts in taxes for business, cuts in taxation for personal taxation, and it's a stimulus to the economy by investing in public services and infrastructure.
And tariffs on goods and more expensive prices
actually,
for consumers.
No, they could remove tariffs on goods. That's the thing. We could unilaterally...
Well, that's not what WTO rules say.
No, it is absolutely what WTO rules says. We can actually remove tariffs, providing remove them from everybody.
So
we can't differentially do it from the EU or anybody else, but providing it's for everybody, on the things that we do not produce, we could reduce the cost of living and put more money into people's pockets to spend.
I don't want to argue about this, but so when the Chancellor says that he believes that there would need to be an emergency budget if we departed on those sort of terms you're advocating, do you think he's wrong?
Brexit.
I think that the Chancellor is in a position that's very difficult, because he doesn't know the direction we're actually going in, and that's partly the government's fault.
But he said in terms, if there's a no-deal Brexit, which is a WTO Brexit, he would need an emergency budget to put the finances back on an even keel.
Well, because he doesn't know which way he's going, it would be prudent to have another budget, because this budget clearly isn't going to deal with the issues that will stimulate the economy. So having another budget, once it becomes clear what's happening with Brexit, is just a prudent measure. It's exactly what he should do. And actually, of course, that means he's saving a lot of his ammunition for that point in time. I can't see why corporate Britain isn't embracing the idea of a WTO exit, because it would actually produce a Singapore-style economy, which actually would be fantastic for business.
Well, that means fewer workers' rights, less protection for workers, and probably lower wages. I mean, that might be one reason why it's not so popular.
No, because a Singapore economy doesn't lead automatically to reducing workers' rights or any of those things, because we can choose our own social policy, but it's the economic policy that counts. Cutting taxes, investing in infrastructure,
no, but it's
rebalancing the economy.
But the whole point is competition, isn't it?
Of course it is, yes.
And if we have more expensive workers' rights, more expensive workers, we're going to lose out in that competition.
We will still have a more competitive position for Britain vis-à-vis the European Union and the rest of the world if we simply cut business taxes, cut personal taxes, invest in infrastructure, use the 39 billion that we're now giving to the EU to spend on those things.
You're not going to have the 39 billion.
No, exactly.
You're going to have less revenue.
You use the 39 billion to be able to cut taxes, to be able to invest in infrastructure. You remove tariffs selectively on things that we do not produce ourselves to reduce the cost of living and give people more spending power. That would make a fantastic economic outcome.
Why do you think the public hasn't been persuaded by this in the 2 years since Brexit?
Because there's been a relentless propaganda campaign from sections of the UK establishment in cahoots with the European Union to actually say that this is not possible and that it's not actually the direction we should move in. And the reason is that the European Union itself is terrified that the UK will become competitive.
Might be to do with official papers produced by government departments and by independent experts.
Well, the official papers aren't necessarily unbiased, as we've seen during the referendum campaign. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it, that the Chancellor now suddenly finds himself with 13 billion to spend. It just shows how wrong the government's focus have been on future growth. The economy is actually doing much better than the government predicted.
But as we saw in our charts, now the worst for growth in the G7.
Temporarily, but in recent months it's been very strong, and it can be very strong in the future. The fact of the matter is that over the period since the beginning of the referendum campaign, the UK has actually done very well.
OK, John Longworth there from Leave Means Leave. Thank you.